So today I'll be reviewing Pokemon Journeys episode 122, the semifinals part 1 sweep. I know this review is very late, so I won't waste your time with a full recap, but I do want to talk about this episode, so let's get right into it. So this episode had 3 main plot points, the first being with those random kids that I won't even bother discussing, the second being Cynthia's flashback, and the third being the devastating battle with Leon vs Diantha, which I have several things to say about. But before that, I think it's worth noting that Go mentioned Project Mew at the start of the episode, since they've been sending him information, and he says that he'll be ready whenever they call for him, and that he's waiting for Ash to get through the semifinals, which likely means that we're going to get the Project Mew arc right after the semifinals, which is strange because why insert a final arc in the middle of another final arc? But then again, we saw them do that with Chloe, so I wouldn't be too surprised, but let's just hope that's not the case. Moving on, now let's talk about Cynthia and the events leading to us learning about her flashback. So as Ash was wrapping up his training, Dragonite sends him flying to where Cynthia was doing hers, and eventually a Leon fan comes along and he asks Cynthia who her first Pokemon was, and she says that it was Garchomp, and that's when we learn that Cynthia has been raising Garchomp since it was an egg back when she was a child, and that they've been together ever since. And that was pretty much the extent of her flashback. To briefly give you my thoughts on it, I honestly thought it was way too short. We pretty much learned all of that in the promotional poster with Cynthia holding an egg. I thought we were at least going to learn about how they became champion together, but we didn't get that. Something is always better than nothing in these situations, but this is definitely something they could have built on. The only other new information we got after this was that Cynthia knew about Ash's Riolu egg and how it wouldn't hatch, but that really isn't much of anything, aside from maybe the obvious foreshadowing that Lucario is going to play a role in the battle with Cynthia. After that, we get the classic lost at the league moment with these random NPC kids, which was definitely a waste of time considering they could have used that time to flesh out Cynthia's backstory, but I'll ignore that for now so we can jump to Leon vs Diantha. I don't even know where to begin with this battle. This could literally be a video on its own, but I'll try to get through it all in this one review. Ash and Cynthia's reaction pretty much summed up how I felt when I got to this point in the episode. Since the battle was already almost over with Diantha down to 2 Pokemon while Leon still had 5 to go, because somehow Leon's Rillaboom, the same Rillaboom that got one-shot by Alain's Charizard in base form, was able to completely dominate Diantha's whole team. The same Diantha who just beat Lance, who took second in the last World Championships. But let's backtrack and talk about what we saw in the battle. Rillaboom, who took on most of Diantha's team and somehow wasn't tired, tanks a Fire Blast from Goodra, a pseudo-legendary Pokemon, and then proceeds to defeat it. After that, Diantha sends out Gardevoir, who's finally able to get the job done against seemingly King Kong. And as a side note, Diantha probably should have pulled out her strongest Pokemon once the first half of her team was defeated by one Pokemon. But then again, no one expects a Rillaboom to sweep half of your champion level team. Moving on though, from then on we get Gardevoir vs Charizard, which pretty much spelt the end for Diantha even after Mega Evolving, since Leon countered by Gigantamaxing Charizard. We did get to see Diantha counter G-Max Wildfire by taking control of it, which was pretty cool and even surprised Leon, but ultimately Leon won in the end and is headed to the finals for the 2nd World Championship in a row. And after the battle, I'm not sure if he was being humble or just trolling, but he says that she had him sweating and that he just got lucky, which I'm pretty sure is low-key disrespect. After that, we see Cynthia looking at Ash since their battle is next, and Ash is worried about what's coming, and that pretty much wraps up the episode. To give you my final thoughts on everything, I thought the scenes with the kids was a waste of time since it's not like we're ever going to see them as trainers anyway. That time should have gone towards Cynthia's flashback, which I think should have been way longer. I don't get why they bothered to even promote it. It would have been better off as a surprise anyway in the actual battle episodes. When it comes to Diantha vs Leon, the power scaling in this series makes 0 sense. In episode 12, we saw Lance vs Leon in the World Championship Finals, and that battle was pretty even, and even though Lance ultimately lost in the end, it was still close enough to be entertaining. In episode 27, we saw Leon vs Raihan, and that battle had some great moments as well, with Raihan putting up a great challenge, until he ultimately lost as well. But somehow, Champion Diantha couldn't do what Lance, who she just beat, did, and Raihan, the 8th gym leader, did. I also need someone to explain to me how the Rillaboom that lost to Alain's base Charizard is stronger than most of Diantha's team, including the Gourgeist that beat Lance's Gyarados. If we follow this same logic, that would mean Alain's Charizard would do the same thing to Diantha's team, since that Charizard was able to beat Rillaboom easily, which is why this doesn't make any sense at all. If it was Leon's Charizard who did all the sweeping, I wouldn't be shocked, and I think it would have further established how strong the two of them are. But base Rillaboom taking on a pseudo-legendary Pokemon like Goodra and then wrecking the rest of Diantha's entire team off screen is just way too questionable, especially since we know that Diantha would have come up with a plan to counter it since she was planning for it in episode 115. I don't want to do any more complaining. I'm just going to say that this episode was extremely disappointing, and I really don't see how Ash is going to beat Leon at all with his current team. Unless he switches into his old Pokemon or gets to use every battle gimmick, things aren't looking good for him at all. With that being said, I give this episode a 5 out of 10. Although it did further establish why Leon's the strongest, I thought we were robbed of a proper battle, and Cynthia's flashback was way too short. Let me know what you thought of this episode in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and bye.